Welcome to the Shootin' Show, brought to you in part by Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt, Executive Director, and by Shooting Times Magazine, and also by Springfield Armory, Wesson Firearms, the United States Practical Shooting Association, Dillon Precision, Ducks Unlimited, the International Handgun Metallic Silhouette Association, Clark Custom Guns, Shotgun News, Fort Knox, Wyoming Arms, and a number of other good friends and supporters. Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, and welcome again to this week's Shootin' Show. We've got another great show in store for you. I think you're really going to enjoy it. We hope everyone made our satellite transition smoothly. So before we go any further, let's let another Shootin' Show begin. Now, friends, what I shot a moment ago and opened the show with today is a handgun that, truthfully, I have overlooked. And we were just talking about this a moment ago. This is the tremendous Ruger Blackhawk in .41 Magnum. And I say overlooked because over the years I have typically had 357s and 44 Magnums, and I said, well, why would I want something in the middle? Because of all the things that you can do with a 357, why not go to the 44 Magnum? Well, what I think that I and a lot of the rest of us have overlooked is this is such a tremendous package for what it is. Now, this Ruger Blackhawk, Ruger has been making this gun since back in the 50s, and I would say it's probably been perfected a long time ago. Of course, this is a new model Blackhawk, which they had the modification in 1973 that has, and we're going to check it to be sure it's empty, and it is. It has a transfer bar automatic safety. So until the hammer is on full cock, the transfer bar does not come up where the firing pin can be contacted by the hammer. In fact, the hammer actually doesn't hit the firing pin. The transfer bar comes up into place, and the hammer hits the transfer bar, and which in turn hits the firing pin, and that's of course what makes the gun go off. But a single action is a gun that a lot of us, I think, may have forgotten about because of all the things that are written and talked about as far as combat and combat matches, and of course the great Smith & Wesson double action revolvers, which a lot of us shoot in competition, myself included. Literally, I think is perfection as far as double action revolvers goes, but a lot of us have forgotten about the single action. You know, friends, these were thought to be the ultimate in personal defense back in the 1860s and 70s. Of course, the 1873 Colt came along, which was the first really successful cartridge revolver shooting a centerfire major caliber cartridge. But Ruger took the good things about a single action design, which is a solid frame. You have a cylinder pin that runs all the way through the frame back into the recoil plate, and it's so strong and so durable that these guns literally can be taken up several steps in calibers. Hamilton Bowen and the gunsmith line bow out in Wyoming are taking these guns and putting 5-shot cylinders in them, and with fantastic powered cartridges, and the frames on these guns will actually take it. Of course, they do a good bit of modification as far as reworking several things, but that Ruger frame is still there. These guns just have fantastic strength. It seems almost limitless as far as what within our parameters of what we know about cartridges and powders within a safe cartridge. It's just unbelievable what they'll do. Now, any mechanism, of course, can be destroyed, and there are some different combinations of powders that you could blow these guns up with just like anything else. I'm not saying that they can't be torn up, but they are probably as strong a firearm handgun design as there is today. The beauty part about these guns is they're light, especially for the caliber. And you know, friends, the .41 Magnum is actually 410 thousandths of an inch in diameter, 41. Well, as you're well aware, a lot of cartridges, such as a 38 Special, is really not a 38. It's 357 thousandths in diameter. A 44 is not a 44. It's actually 429,000. It's actually closer to a 43. So some of our cartridge designations date back to the 1800s or so. But the 41 is actually a true 410,000. So you're only looking at 19 thousandths of an inch in diameter from being a 44 Magnum. And I was looking in some of the loading tables, and actually Remington shows some 41 Magnum loadings which have more foot-pounds of energy than some 44 Magnum loadings. So this is really a hot cartridge, and you can do so much with it. In fact, one thing that I wish some of you'd call the good folks out at CCI Spear and ask them if they wouldn't make a shot cartridge, because I'm going to do it, and if enough of us do it, maybe we can get it done. Make a shot cartridge in the 41 Magnum chambering, because that would be so handy as far as for snakes out here in the country where we are. Well, the shot cartridge has a lot going for it, and your case, of course, is big enough to hold a lot of shot. But anyway, these guns being a single action, of course, it has to be thumb cocked for every shot, like so. You can pull the trigger all you want to, nothing will happen until you cock the revolver. Now, these guns usually have pretty good triggers. This one does, and we'll have another Black Hawk we're going to talk about in just a moment. It also has a good trigger. But the 41 Magnum is just such a neat combination. You have a fairly lightweight, it's a compact revolver design. The Ruger Black Hawk is probably the ultimate in reliability. I've just never heard of one breaking down, and so it's such a neat combination. In this case, as we're going to show you in just a moment, when you shoot such a powerful cartridge, the gun recoils, it rolls up in your hand. It doesn't hit you nearly as hard as, say, a double action revolver, because it does roll up in your hand. So really they're pleasant to shoot even with full powered loads. And this particular gun, again, this is the first 41 Magnum that I ever handled and shot. Well, I guess I've handled others, but this is the first one I've really had an opportunity to bring out and test and ring out, and I'm impressed. Seriously, with the power level that the gun is capable of. A lot of authorities do not take single actions seriously for home defense, but I think they may be missing the boat there, because these guns cannot be rapid fired, say, as quickly by the average person as, say, a double action revolver, but they can be shot pretty doggone fast. And the way you do it is the gun recoils up in your hand like so, and by the time you get your sight picture reacquired, you can cock the hammer and shoot the gun again. And I am totally 100% against the spray and pray philosophy of just shooting a lot of bullets at one time and hoping they hit something. It just doesn't work that way. Every shot, you need to be sure, whether you're hunting or if you were in defense of your life or whatever else, you need to be sure where every shot is going. That is so important. We just don't point a handgun or anything else and just spray an area, because suddenly, you're out of bullets, and two, you may have hit something inadvertently that you would not have want to have hit at all. So that is so important. The single action really has more going for it than a lot of us have, I think, have realized. Another advantage to a single action, you can shoot a couple of times, and you can load the empty cartridge chambers. Of course, you have to punch them out one at a time, but without having your gun down, if you shoot 2 or 3 times, you can just load those 2 or 3 and reload, and of course your gun is never out of action. So there are some advantages. These guns are relatively inexpensive as compared to the double action revolvers, and certainly to the semi-automatics. Relatively inexpensive. They're a little bit simpler in design, and they're just such neat guns. Yes, I am excited. It's been a while since I've done a lot of shooting with a single action. I'd forgotten just how much fun they can be. So we're going to do a little shooting here in a moment and let you look at the gun in recoil. This is a full charge 41 Magnum cartridge. This is a 170 grain bullet, and we chronographed this cartridge out of this gun a couple of days ago at about 1,475 feet per second. Now, friends, a 170 grain bullet out of a 4 5/8 inch barrel or so, that's pretty hot. And of course, these bullet weights go up to 210 or 220 grains, just depending upon the bullet that you like. But that's we thought was excellent performance. That is a factory Remington load. This load is listed in their tables at about 1,420 feet a second. This is one of those rare instances where these bullets are actually outperform what the tables say they will. So let's shoot the gun and let you look at it just a moment. Now friends, to load a single action revolver, we will push out the loading gate on the right with our thumb and bring a chamber in line. So we'll put them in one at a time, and believe it or not, there are speed loaders for single action revolvers, and I don't know the name of the company that makes them, but I'm going to find out, where it has 6 cartridges in a tube, and what you do is you put it over in the loading gate there and just turn the cylinder, and it loads itself very rapidly. So we're going to get all 6 of them in there. And on these new model Blackhawks, since they have the transfer bar ignition system, these guns are safe with 6 rounds in the cylinder. The old style Blackhawks and the Colt single actions and many of their copies should only be carried with 5 rounds in the gun. So what you'll need to do is leave the hammer down over an empty chamber on the old style Blackhawks and also on the Colt single actions and their copies. So let's shoot this 41 Magnum Blackhawk, and I think you'll be as impressed as I've been with it. All right, friends, watch the gun in recoil. Watch how it rolls in my hand. It's got a pretty substantial recoil, but it doesn't hurt you. So let's take a couple of shots for this 41. You know, it wasn't bad at all. Wasn't bad at all. Now, friends, I think you'll agree that it really, and of course I tell you, it really did not hurt shooting this really super powerful round in this lightweight gun, lightweight as compared to some other things. And by the time, again, it came out of recoil, I had my sight picture reacquired, and I could still hit another target, and that was pretty quick. All right, to unload the single action, let me show you what we'll do. Of course, we'll bring the empty case up in line with the loading gate, which we open, and very simply, we will just punch the cases out. And it is slow, somewhat slower certainly than a double action revolver to unload. There we go. But with a little practice, it doesn't take long at all. Of course, I missed one, I have to bring it back. Now then, with a little practice, you can do it quicker than you think. So this is such a neat gun. We put it on paper the other day. I ran 6 rounds through it at 10 yards, and as I've said before on the show, I'm about as good an average shot as any of us out here. And I certainly do not have any unusual marksmanship qualities, I suppose, but I do try and work at it. I'm a fair shot. And this gun put 6 of these 170 grain full charge loads into a 1-inch, one large hole. So we were all impressed with that when you get the power and the carrying capability of these guns and still get a really good accuracy. So we'll do something else with it in just a moment.
It's fast. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's fun. This is the USPSA, United States Practical Shooting Association, the fastest growing sport in America today. If you'd like to become more proficient and confident with your firearm, meet new and interesting people, and compete with thousands around the world, join the USPSA. There's a local chapter near you.
Friends, the Shootin' Show will be back in 1 minute after this break for your local cable company or television station.
Now friends, we're going to put down our 41 Magnum Black Hawk for just a moment. And I have another gun that's just a little bit unusual from what we'll normally encounter. This is another Black Hawk, but this one, and we'll check it to be sure, of course, that it's empty. This one is in .30 carbine chambering. Now this is a bullet that typically fits the .30 caliber semi-automatic carbine that Carbine Williams invented back around or just before World War II, along about that period anyway. And the .30 carbine is one of those cartridges that is sometimes overlooked, but is such an unusual combination. Typically, the bullet you'll encounter will be a full metal jacket bullet of 110 grains. Now, this leaves the muzzle of a carbine at about 1900 feet a second. Well, all this full metal jacket bullet is going to do is punch a .30 caliber hole in whatever it hits. These guns have tremendous, or this bullet has tremendous penetration capabilities. Well, that's not something that those of us out here in the field really have much use for. Well, the good news is they also make soft nose bullets for this chambering, and you can hand load some 110 grain hollow points. Now, we chronographed this .30 carbine load out of this Black Hawk, and it ran about 1,450 up to 1,500 feet per second, depending upon which load we used, and that's pretty hot. A 110 grain bullet at 1,450 to 1,500 feet a second is like a good strong .357 Magnum. Now, you don't have your bullet diameter, but with a soft nose or a hollow point, well, you are approaching some of the better loads for the .357. The beauty part about the Black Hawk, it's a large gun. It's the same frame as what the 41 Magnum we were looking at earlier. And of course, I would mention that Ruger makes these Black Hawks in a number of different chamberings, all the way from the 3220 or 32 H&R Magnum up through and including the 45 Colt. So, and of course, everything in between just about. So this is such a neat gun, very little recoil. I say this is a heavy gun in relation to the caliber, what it is, or of some other handguns. It's really not that heavy as compared to, say, double action revolver of the same size. It's going to be lighter than that. But these guns have very little recoil. It seems to be very accurate. We have not done any extensive accuracy tests with the .30 carbine loading, but it's pretty loud. And of course, you always want to have hearing protection and eye protection when you go out and shoot. But it's one of those things that are a little bit different. This is a companion gun. If you carry a .30 carbine for small game hunting or whatever, you can have a companion revolver in the same chambering. And of course, it'll shoot those rifle rounds just like they're going out of style. This gun is so strong, it just handles them so easily. So we're going to shoot this .30 carbine in just a moment. And someone asked me, we get a lot of questions about safety and how to deal with different gun mechanisms. Well, let me show you something briefly while I have this single action here in my hands. If you get a single action revolver cocked, someone says, how do you uncock it? All right, we're going to cock the gun. On the Rugers with the transfer bar, what you can do, you can pull the trigger. Now get a good purchase on the hammer with your thumb. You can pull the trigger and let the hammer start down, immediately release the trigger, and the transfer bar is going to go out of the way as the hammer comes down, so you can safely decock the gun. And of course, all safe gun handling rules always apply. We never point a gun at anything we cannot afford to lose, something that we can't do without, because we just need to work and think about safety and safety and safety all the time. So let's shoot this .30 carbine. I think you'll be impressed. We're getting on later in the afternoon today, and you may see a little muzzle flash out of the end of this thing, but they're loud, but believe me, they are neat cartridges and gun combinations to own and enjoy shooting. Now friends, I'm going to do a little bit of slip shooting, which I'm going to put my finger on the trigger, and instead of cocking it with my right thumb, I'll cock it with my left thumb. And that's called slip shooting, and I'll do my version of it anyway. And let's shoot this .30 carbine and let you look at it and recoil. Here we go. And you'll notice I missed the hammer there one time. Very little recoil, but Let me tell you what, that's a potent cartridge out of a handgun. Now, friends, we're going to shoot the water jug over here on the right with a full metal jacket bullet. Again, I really don't recommend them for field use. Now, for target practice and just out having fun and plinking and shooting tin cans, the full metal jacket is great. But for any sort of game animal, I recommend the hollow point bullet or the soft nose. And of course, you've got enough velocity to make the soft nose expand. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let's shoot the water jug over here on the right with a full metal jacket bullet and watch what happens to it. I don't think there's going to be a tremendous explosion or anything, but let's watch with the full metal jacket bullet at about 1,500 feet per second. Well, it had enough velocity to knock the jug over, but it really didn't blow it up or anything like that. We certainly want to say that you really should consider, if you get a good price on a single action, one of these Blackhawks or some other single action handgun, they're really worth considering because they're so much fun to shoot and enjoy. And I tell you what, this 41 Magnum, I may have to keep this gun because it is such a nice package and it is powerful. So let's shoot these 170 grain jacketed hollow point Remingtons at some water jugs over here and just see what the gun looks like, just for fun since we're here. It's so nice to be out shooting outdoors here and really enjoying ourselves. Great fun.
And now, friends, we want to feature some information from Gun Owners of America. And for more information on GOA, write to them at 8001 Forbes Place, Suite 102 in Springfield, Virginia. The zip code is 22151, or you can call them at area 703-321-8585.
This is Larry Pratt with a commentary from Gun Owners of America. What if the courts were given a good Second Amendment case where they would have a chance to decide how to apply the right to keep and bear arms in a clear-cut fashion? Well, Gun Owners Foundation is supporting just such a case. Douglas Offinger is suing the federal government on constitutional as well as contractual grounds. Offinger is a firearms manufacturer, importer, and private investigator. In his capacity as an importer, he had arranged to bring into the U.S. 90 M14 fully automatic rifles. The arrangement had been approved by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, BATF, the federal gun police. Then the BATF reversed themselves after Offinger went ahead with his deal and revoked the permit for importation they had granted him. Offinger, after a great deal of planning and research, took the feds to court. Of course, he is asking for redress from the courts to allow him to go ahead with his deal as originally approved by the BATF. But Offinger is going for much more. Offinger, as a resident of Connecticut, has taken advantage of the state's unique militia law. He has duly registered an unorganized militia company under the state law. That gives him standing as a member of a particular militia. Offinger is pressing the court to rule that his militia rights have been infringed in view of his membership in the militia company he formed. He is also pointing to the infringement of his individual right to keep and bear arms under the U.S. Constitution. The case is now in federal court, where the judge has initially thrown out his standing as a militia member and an individual citizen with an individual Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Offinger is tenacious. He is appealing this arbitrary narrowing of his case. That is where the case stands at the moment. Offinger gives gun owners the first major gun case in which a genuine Mr. Clean is the plaintiff rather than a defendant for some other crime in which the gun issue is raised as a secondary consideration. Offinger is licensed to carry concealed weapons in his capacity as a private investigator in most of New England and even in New York City. Contributions to the case are tax deductible if checks are made out to Gun Owners Foundation and earmarked Offinger.
Now, friends, you're looking at the Grendel P12 in .380 caliber, which we recently tested on our program, and I believe you'll recall that our reviews of this little gun were absolutely excellent. It was extremely reliable. In fact, we even tried to make it malfunction and couldn't. It is a 12-shot .380. This would be an excellent backup gun for a police officer, or if you're looking for a small handgun to carry, this would be one of your best choices. Again, if you get a chance and you go down to your local gun store, ask your dealer to let you look at one of the fine Grendel handguns. This is the case of a gun with an economical price but being extremely well made. We want to remind you of our good friends at Shooting Times magazine, the absolute best general information shooting magazine available on your newsstand today. They have all sorts of articles on handguns and long guns and hunting and all sorts of information about reloading and gun safety and many, many other fine features by some of your favorite firearms writers. For subscription information, call Shooting Times at 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is. Now, friends, by just looking, you'd never guess that this petite young lady is carrying not one, but in fact 2 handguns. And this is the fantastic concept of the shadow concealment systems. And you'll notice as she unbuttons her sweater, she's carrying a full-size .357 on her left, and she's carrying a Ladysmith on her right. This is one of the neatest concepts that I have ever seen for concealed holsters. And here she is again. Again, you'd never guess that she's carrying a full-size .45 ACP semi-automatic handgun along with 2 magazines in the shadow concealment systems holsters. They fit inside the pants, and it's amazing how comfortable they are. And this is something we highly recommend because in many areas concealed handgun permits are available. I would sincerely suggest getting a catalog from Shadow Concealment Systems at Post Office Box 3952, Wilmington, North Carolina. Their zip code is 28406, or give them a call at area 919-791-6656. Trust me on this one. This is a great idea and a tremendous concept, and a lot of us could really find uses for these.
When you're armed, you can just say no.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after this break for your local cable company or television station. And now, friends, we'd like to feature Lieutenant Colonel Art Alphin, retired, formerly of West Point, who is now head of the great A-Square Company. And for more information on A-Square products, and of course they build some of the finest heavy game rifles in the world, you can write to them at A-Square, 1 Industrial Park, Bedford, Kentucky. The zip code is 40006, or you can call them at area 502-255-7456.
In the 21 years between the world wars, many nations devoted a great deal of effort to new machine gun designs. Their hope was to have a machine gun that would be more mobile than the water-cooled and yet give up as few of its advantages as possible. I do not want to cover the history of weapons development during those 21 years. Instead, I'll compare 2 designs, the MG-34 and the BAR. I'll cover the characteristics which resulted from their design and then show how each army incorporated that weapon into its tactical organization and doctrine. According to this chart, one would say that the MG-34, with its higher volume of fire, is obviously the superior weapon. Well, I'm not so sure. Let's take a look. This is the German MG-34. It weighs 26.5 pounds and can be carried by one man. It feeds from this metallic, non-disintegrating belt. This belt must be recovered by the crew and reloaded with ammunition after use. Unlike the Maxim and Browning cloth belts, these belts lay on top of the cartridges in the feedway. The bolt drives the cartridge forward, down, and out of the belt into the chamber. The weapon operates on the short recoil principle, which you have seen before. It does not have water cooling, so it employs two other things in order to dissipate the heat generated by sustained fire. First, it fires from the open bolt so that when the weapon is not actually firing, air can circulate through the barrel. Secondly, it has a quick change barrel. When a barrel becomes overheated, it need only be exchanged for a cool one. The MG-34 and BAR will make the same target run. When displacing between engagements, 3 surprise targets will appear at 50 yards. Some disadvantages of the MG-34 become immediately apparent. Though the weapon can be carried by one man, it is not single-man portable. That high volume of fire is predicated upon the quick change barrel for dissipation of heat. There has to be an assistant gunner for carrying spare barrels in the spare parts kit. At the volume of fire shown on the chart, the crew has to change the barrel once every minute. Since it consumes more ammunition, an ammo bearer is needed. It takes a while for the crew to get the weapon into and out of position. You saw the confusion as the emergency targets were initially engaged by the assistant gunner with his rifle. He knew the machine gun simply couldn't open fire in time. Since our targets don't actually kill people, the crew then went ahead and engaged them with the MG-34. This weapon can be fired in an emergency, as you see in this photograph. I'm not so sure, however, that I would like to be the assistant gunner who carries it over my shoulder while the gunner behind me blazes away. The MG-34 was difficult to control. You should have noticed that it had a large beaten zone. The extremely high cyclic rate, over 800 rounds per minute, does not help this. Since it is a short recoil weapon, nearly 1/3 the weight of the weapon is moving after every shot, making it even more difficult to control and recoil. However, this is what the German wanted, for in the squad he saw the MG-34 as an area suppression weapon. Another disadvantage of its high cyclic rate is that the part velocity is higher. If the bolt has to travel backward and forward 800 times per minute rather than, say, 500 times per minute, then the bolt's acceleration and deceleration at the beginning of each forward and back motion is that much more violent and abrupt. This breaks parts and places a premium on clean, high-quality ammunition. Partway through engaging the first set of targets, the MG-34 extractor tore through a cartridge case. The crew had to change barrels in order to continue. Normally, one of the assistant gunners would have used the toolkit to clear that barrel. Otherwise, the barrels were changed only when overheated. Wherever possible, the Germans set up the machine gun on the tripod. This helped stabilize the weapon and gave it a smaller beaten zone. Further, its traversing and elevating mechanism aided in the adjustment of long-range fire. The tripod was a heavy, clumsy affair, but it was always carried with the machine gun. You do not see German combat photography of the MG-34 without a tripod or an observer with binoculars to assist in the adjustment of long-range fire. This is the proper way to employ a crew-served weapon. The gunner adjusts sights, aims, and fires the weapon, and the assistant gunner keeps it working. Somebody else must spot the fall of the rounds. Without this, the effective range of the machine gun is no more than 1,000 yards. Secondly, you will never see German soldiers carrying belts of machine gun ammunition festooned across their chests like the Frito Bandito. They always carried their ammunition in the can and fed it directly from the can into the machine gun. This kept the ammo clean and the belts free of rust and was essential for reliable operation. The MG-34 pays a price for its volume of fire. With its spare barrels and tripod, it weighs roughly 3/4 what a water-cooled machine gun weighed. It is slow to place in position. It still takes a 4-man crew to carry it and extract from it its potential volume of fire and combat range. To a German, none of this was a disadvantage. His tactical organization was based on this machine gun. This is the breakdown of the German squad. It is plain that the German squad was designed for fire and movement. The machine gun would lay down a base of fire. While it was suppressing the enemy, the remainder of the squad would maneuver about, and when the range was proper, they would go in with grenades, rifle fire, and the bayonet. This is the system that took Ibn Emal and Paris and got to the banks of the Volga River. The Browning automatic rifle of World War II was a beefed up and bipod equipped version of the BAR of World War I. The BAR weighs 18 pounds with its bipod and feeds from a 20-round detachable staggered double column box magazine. It does not have a quick change barrel, though it does fire from the open bolt in order to help cool the weapon. It is equipped with a bipod to help stabilize the weapon during automatic fire from the prone position. The selector switch gave two different cyclic rates of fire, 500 rounds per minute and 350 rounds per minute, both of them fully automatic. Let's see what the BAR can do with the same target array that you saw before. It is quite obvious that the BAR does not have the sustained volume of fire of the MG-34. However, a couple of other things are equally obvious. The BAR can truly be carried and operated by one man. The weapon can be put in action as fast as any individual infantryman's rifle. It is certainly as accurate as the MG-34 when fired from the bipod. Its lower cyclic rate of fire and a few other characteristics reduce movement of the weapon during firing, and the beaten zone is relatively small. On a suppression target, the BAR was slightly less capable. A well-trained gunner could still put rounds in the target area and still kill or suppress the individuals there. However, he only had 20 rounds to do the job, and there was a distinct break in firing for changing magazines. Because it is a fixed barrel weapon, the volume of fire must be voluntarily held down. The weapon can be fired at more than 80 rounds per minute, but if it is, the barrel will rapidly overheat. Severe overheating burns out the barrel and may even warp the receiver. All of these disadvantages made little difference. The American squad was not primarily organized around the BAR. It was in the squad in order to beef up the squad's overall volume of fire. If the squad wanted to, it could of course use the BAR as a suppression weapon and maneuver about it. But the BAR was never really intended to operate separately from the remaining members of the squad and never intended as a general purpose weapon. At platoon, company, and battalion level, other machine guns, the Browning air-cooled, the Browning water-cooled, and the Browning 50 caliber heavy barrel, were present in order to fill the suppression role or the base of fire role. When the American squad did maneuver against the enemy under the covering fire of platoon or company level machine guns, then the squad's semi-automatic Garand rifles and the BAR gave them a great advantage over a German squad. Not only was the squad's volume of fire much higher, but if the maneuvering squad was caught in a position where they needed long-range automatic fire, they still had a weapon that could get the job done. Each weapon, the BAR and the MG-34, had its own very unique set of characteristics, advantages, and disadvantages. Each weapon, when woven into the tactical organization and when coupled with the fire of other weapons, contributed to the success of their respective armies. Which is better? Neither. The intelligent leader used these weapons in concert with his other weapons in order to make an unbeatable team. The design trade-offs which you saw here are not unlike the design trade-offs in weapons which you use today. The basic concepts for the use of these weapons have not changed. The German soldier properly employed his MG-34 during World War II, and the American properly employed his BAR.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after this break for your local cable company or television station. Now, friends, we sure want to mention Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. You have over 35,000 firearms bargains, 36 big issues for only $20. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. Their zip code is 68902. You can call them at area 402-463-4589, or for MasterCard and Visa customers for subscriptions only, call 1-800-345-6923. Shotgun News. Get it today. Don't put it off. Now, friends, some time ago, we took our camera and visited the Saunders Museum in Berryville, Arkansas. And they have an absolutely fantastic collection of firearms, primarily black powder guns. Most of their collection is black powder. But they also have a lot of other extremely interesting artifacts. So we're going to take a look at some of the things that we saw in the Saunders Museum. Now, this museum is open to the public, but you'll need to call for their opening hours. So their number is in information for Berryville, Arkansas, the Saunders Museum. And we want to add that we appreciate their courtesy so much to us, and I think you're going to enjoy some of the things you're going to see.
This is an original LeMat revolver. Now, these were made in France and carried by a number of Civil War officers, because they were very expensive even then. But this is a 9-shot 44 caliber revolver with a 65 caliber or 20 gauge shotgun essentially in the center. And Mr. Emmett, tell us what you just did. Why did they have so desperately want that 9-shot revolver?
Some of the historians tell us that that was made so that when the enemy seen run out of 6 shots on the 6-shooters, that they would rush the man firing, and that they replaced that with this so they'd have 3 more shots to shoot at the enemy while he was rushing them, and then if that didn't get him, they would shoot him with the shotgun.
Well, sir, I would say the man had a darn good chance. Of course, those of you watching, you just have to come see this collection. They've got such an unusual collection. I believe you have over 800 handguns. Is that right, Mr. Emmett?
Yes, sir. All in working condition.
All in working condition. In other words, everything here is in mechanically sound condition, which can't be said for a lot of other memorabilia museums.
All this case is flintlock pistols.
We have a number of front-loader single-shot percussion-type black powder pistols. And this is, for those of you interested, this is where the term pistol actually came from, if I'm historically correct here, because a lot of people mistakenly call a revolver a pistol, but the term pistol actually came from these single-shot handguns. This particular item is an Egyptian sword that is over 2,000 years old. We have a case here of Hopkins and Allen and Whitney small revolvers. And of course, you have a collection that took a lifetime of this gentleman and vast sums of money to accumulate. But it is fabulous. And here is a fabulous Colt collection. These are a number of double-action Colt models. They were very interesting in the way they worked. They were not particularly durable, but they're very famous nonetheless. Now this particular handgun, this is one of the original, this is a 25 caliber 4-barrel gun, and as the gun is manipulated, the barrels actually move up by mechanical means. And there's a pepper box next to it. How about that? And this particular gun has a bayonet that unfolds, and it's a French 11mm 6-shot pinfire double-action revolver. How about that? For those folks that talk about a revolver not having enough firepower, I hope I can get in here without the glare. This is a 20-shot revolver. How about that? A 30 caliber Lefaucheux pinfire 20-shot double-action, double-barreled revolver. Isn't that is amazing. Now this is an original volcanic pistol. It's a lever-action repeating pistol, and this was the beginning of the Winchester rifle, and this is serial number 560. Is that fabulous? It's got a solid brass frame. The Winchester repeaters, and certainly the Winchester Arms Company, got its beginnings in this particular handgun. That's a 40 caliber on top, and this is a 30 caliber on the bottom. But ladies and gentlemen, here is an original production Colt Walker 1847. And they only made a little over 1,000 of these guns. Colt's price to the government was $28 each. And of course, this is an excellent condition Colt Walker. It is shootable. However, being that it is worth somewhere between $50,000 and $300,000, nobody in their right mind would shoot it. But it is amazing. Incidentally, the museum has 3 original Colt Walkers. And here's one of the original Smith & Wesson top brake safety hammerless. And of course, today we have the new model 640 from Smith & Wesson, which essentially is the same principle. And it was a great idea then, and it certainly is again today. And also here's a beautiful Colt 357 single action Army, and this gun is gold plated. And let me tell you what, you just have to see it to believe it. Friends, this is the beginnings. We're talking about the beginnings of handguns here. This is an old front loader that they put the powder and a ball or whatever they were going to shoot down the muzzle here, and they actually touched it off with a wick in the back. And you folks have to see this. They actually fired it by a wick that came out of the top of the rear of the barrel. And that is, of course, there's no way of knowing at this point. This gun may be 800 or 900 years old. Here was a matchlock, and this particular little gun dates from the year 1450 AD. And of course, these were very highly refined mechanisms. It's really amazing how well they did work. And here are a couple of matchlocks. This one is from the year 1515, and they're just in fabulous condition for their age. Cherokee Bill. Here is a 45 Colt single action. All it belonged to Cole Younger, people that you might be familiar with. And here is a gun that belonged to Quantrill himself. Oh, we got to get that. We've got to get that. And of course, Jesse James was one of Quantrill's raiders. This gun in the center of your screen was one of Jesse James' personal firearms, and I believe he used this particular gun to kill 5 deputies when they tried to arrest him. In other words, Jesse James was no lightweight.
Now, friends, we've only viewed a small part of this tremendous collection in Berryville, Arkansas at the Saunders Museum. For those of you who don't know where Berryville is, well, it's not that far from Harrison. So if you're going anywhere near that area and you like guns or old-timey things, we highly recommend you stopping in and visit the good folks at the Saunders Museum. Be sure and call them for their hours that they're open, but they're awfully nice people, and it's an experience you'll never forget. The Saunders Museum in Berryville, Arkansas. We want to be sure and thank our good friends at Britton's Gun Shop at 517 Louisiana Avenue in Shreveport for their support and assistance on our program. Many of our test guns can be found down at Britton's on sale. So if you'd like to have a shooting show test gun, well, be sure and stop in Britton's in Shreveport. If you need any sort of loading equipment or supplies or long guns, handguns, whatever, be sure and stop by Britton's if you're anywhere in the Arklatex area at 517 Louisiana Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana. Their zip code is 71101, or you can call them for information at area 318-221-4131. And we want to remind you to call your local cable companies because we are free to them and we want to be in as many areas as possible. See you next week.